Hi, good morning to everyone who's following us. My name is Rosa. I'm a senior reporter, and we are starting a new Live do Valor. Just to remember, Live do Valor is daily from Monday to Friday, and it is streamed through Valor site and Valor channels on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And today we are going to discuss how artificial intelligence has been applied to healthcare. And you can listen to our conversation in English or in Portuguese with simultaneous translation. And this morning we have with us Dr. Rosalind Picard. She's a professor at the MIT Media Lab, a researcher, an inventor, an author, a consultant, and co-founded two companies. I think, but please, Dr. Rosalind, correct me if I wrong. It's empática and afectiva.
That's perfect. Good morning and bom dia.
Yeah, bom dia, bom dia. How are you, Dr. Picard?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. Thank you. How many hours do you have in your day to do so many things and difficult things?
Well, I'm blessed by getting to love what I do for work. So it's not really work after the workday ends.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Picard, thank you again. I have some questions for you. The first one is artificial intelligence is changing many sectors: agriculture, education, security, retail, and so on. There are so many examples. How AI is affecting the healthcare industry?
AI is poised, I think, to make huge changes in healthcare. I hope they will be very positive. For example, AI is really good at taking lots of data, detailed information about people, and combining it to understand better what we might have as a diagnosis or what we might be headed for in terms of a sickness. And the dream would be to be able to use AI to tell if you're going to get sick before you get sick, when it's easier to heal you and maybe even prevent a lot of sickness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But in terms of AI adoption in healthcare, in what stage are we at, and what kind of advancements are we going to see in near future?
It's certainly hard to get new things adopted in healthcare. So I don't think it's going to go as fast as the technology is able to go. The technology will be ready long before the adoption, in part because I think probably where you are, as in the US, doctors are very conservative, and we do want them to be very conservative about things that might impact our health. So I think what we're going to see is very rapid adoption in the well-being side, where people are trying to stay well, and very slow adoption on the treating medical diseases side, where it takes time to prove the efficacy and the safety to groups like the FDA in the US. And also another thing is, even if it's proven to be useful, a lot of people can't afford new technological solutions, so they have to wait until it's reimbursed, which takes an even longer time for the insurance companies to agree to do that. So there are a lot of stages that are going to impact the speed of adoption.
So there are issues related to regulation and price.
Yeah, definitely. And that affects little companies who are innovating. If they can't afford to do all the work to get it reimbursed, they may not survive just because they, can't go state to state and get what it takes to get people to pay for something if it's an expensive innovation. The lower cost innovations, I think, will catch on much more quickly, especially if they truly do improve people's lives.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Picard, you were a distinguished member of MIT staff. What are your main areas of research at MIT Media Lab?
Well, I do something that may sound a little crazy. Years ago, instead of just building AI to make computer cameras see more what was in an image, what we call computer vision, I started building AI that could try to help interpret human emotion. And some of it is simple, like, is that a smile? Is it a smile that looks like a happy smile or a frustrated smile? Is that a frown? Is that a look of confusion? But some of the other data we started working with, in addition to speech, like tone of voice, is gesture, posture, and physiology. We started measuring from the surface of the skin, not only heart rate and respiration, but also electrical changes in the skin that originally we just thought were like related to sweat, but it turned out to be full of some very big surprises there. And this became a whole area of research that's now called affective computing, where computers try to help people help understand and communicate our emotional data and bring emotional intelligence to human interaction, try not to be so frustrating to deal with.
You mentioned affective computing, and many people think of artificial intelligence as something cold and even suspicious or dangerous. Nobody wants their doctor to be a robot in the future. But you wrote a book called Affective Computing, and which is about to give machines the skills of emotional intelligence. What is affective computing, and is it possible to make AR more kind?
Definitely, we can make it more kind. And I share the concerns about not wanting a robot doctor, not wanting, an unfeeling, uncaring system to take care of people, because we know that we're much more unpredictable and complex than a set of rules can dictate behavior to treat. When I started affective computing, I was motivated by several things, one of which was that interacting with computers was so frustrating. Society was talking about not only road rage, where drivers got really mad and attacked other drivers, but computer rage, where people were so mad at their computers that they were like, one guy took a gun and shot his computer through the monitor and through the hard drive. And another cook in New York got so mad at his computer, he threw it in the deep fat fryer. His computer fried. People were so mad at technology. And I thought, why is technology so irritating and so stupid? And even the smartest AI in technology was things like this Microsoft Office assistant that was really smart at seeing what you were doing, like if you were writing a letter, but it would come out and smile at you when you were not happy. Now, a human knows that if you're not happy, it's not the time to come and act real happy around you, right? That just makes you madder. So computers, I realized, were lacking emotional intelligence. They couldn't see if we were irritated. They didn't know how to respond to it. They would put on little happy faces and stuff at exactly the dumbest time to do that, which made people hate those AIs. It made them hate Clippy. It made Bill Gates get a standing ovation when he finally announced Clippy was going away. So the idea behind giving computers emotional intelligence was to actually humanize the interaction and to, number one, show respect for human feelings.
Yeah. And you also founded Affective Computing Group at MIT Media Lab, and created two companies in this area. One of them is Affectiva. Could you give us more details about it?
Yes, we to actually take these what seemed like crazy ideas at the time and build them out with scientific integrity. Since I'm an electrical engineer by training, I wanted to see if we could actually measure emotion in a robust, reliable, repeatable way. Because usually people just use surveys, and maybe that works great for psychology classes. But I was working with a lot of engineers, many of whom didn't know how they felt. In fact, they would come to me and say, what do you mean emotions, Roz? I mean, I understand when it gets really strong and somebody's really angry or somebody's really depressed, but most of the time in the middle, they didn't think they had emotions. They didn't sense the subtle changes. So I thought the self-report method of surveys was not going to give us accurate data. So that's when we started building things like wearable sensors that could pick up changes in your physiology and automated software to read changes in facial expressions. And that software and those wearables that we built, we started to get lots of requests for them. So this was work at MIT in a lab. We were hand building these things. And all these people around the world are starting to see our publications and write us and ask for these, including parents of children with autism whose emotions seemed very unpredictable. And they wanted to know if we could predict if a meltdown was going to happen so their child wouldn't get kicked out of school. And these just heartbreaking stories. So I thought, we need to get them this technology. And the only way to do that when you're in academia is to set up a company that can not only make them with high quality, but provide services and handle all the requests. So we set up, I co-founded a company called Affectiva with a woman from Egypt, Rana El Kalyubi. She is currently the CEO today. And the company has still survived all these years. It has transformed from being a wearables and AI software company to being focused on emotion AI, on reading faces and voices and providing tools primarily these days to help with understanding people's emotions when they want to communicate them. Like if they want to show a company what they think of their videos or their educational content, and also to provide services related to driver safety right now. So they have now pivoted and focused on the software. And the hardware got canned early on. The CEO said, this is too stressful, it's too annoying, manufacturing's too hard, hardware is hard.
And you also founded an Empatica, which created a wearable that received a clearance from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. I think it was the first one for children with epilepsy. How hard was to get that? And how does the device work?
Yes, thanks for asking about that. Yeah, so after Affectiva said we can't do hardware, I started another company that then merged with Empatica SRL in Europe to form Empatica Inc. in the US. And Empatica got the first FDA clearance for a smartwatch used for adults and pediatrics for detecting the most life-threatening kinds of seizures. Now, you can ask why, how did somebody working on emotion wind up building a seizure detector? Well, it turns out while we were measuring a little boy who couldn't speak, his stress, I was looking at the data and I saw this giant peak and I couldn't figure out what caused it. And back then our sensors were built by hand. And as I dug into it more, as an electrical engineer, I just couldn't explain it. So I called the boy at home and said, hey, what happened to your little brother when this big peak happened? And he checks a diary that he had kept of everything going on with his little brother. And he said that was right before he had a grand mal seizure. Now, I'm not trained as a medical doctor, but I started doing research. And next thing I knew, I'm on the phone with the guy who cuts open people's heads at Children's Hospital Boston, the leading children's hospital in the US. And he, takes out parts of your brain that have unusual electrical activity if you have seizures that aren't solved by medication. And if the seizure is very localized and they think you could benefit from the surgery. So he looks at our data and gets interested in adding our sensor into his studies. So next thing we know, we're measuring electrodermal activity on the wrists of 90 children going in for being evaluated for possible brain surgery. And we learned that we actually were detecting a significant signal, not 20 minutes before the seizure, like we hoped, but at the precise moment that the brain activity was starting to cease. And this told us that we could actually build a seizure detector without having to put something on their head. We could build something that worked on the wrist. So we did a lot more studies, and Empatica focused on making that into a safe product. And what it does today is it detects actually this is Embrace 2. It detects, it runs AI on board. It's constantly measuring from the surface of my skin, my movement, my temperature, my electrical changes that go up if you get sweatier, but also go up sometimes just with stress. and the AI is watching. And if it detects a combination of patterns that looks like an event that it's been taught is a seizure, then it will send the signal to my phone, which will call my caregivers, because if you're having a generalized tonic-clonic seizure, you go unconscious and you can't ask for help. And we now know that people have a significantly higher risk of dying after these seizures if nobody's there, if they're all alone, they can stop breathing. So it's really important, if you know somebody who has grand mal seizures, to let them know not to be alone, and to make sure that a device or another person can be nearby, or the device can call a person to come and be nearby in the minutes after a seizure, because that's when you can stop breathing. But if somebody's there and they reposition you or give you first aid, you have a significantly better chance of being fine afterwards.
Is the product already available commercially?
Yeah. It is available. It's available pretty much all over the world commercially. And it's called Embrace, like a hug, Embrace 2. And it's available for children 6 and up. You do have to ask a doctor to write a prescription in the US. But globally, I don't think a prescription is required. And it's certified medical in the European Union and in the United States.
Yeah. Dr. Picard, would you say AI in healthcare is more preventive than reactive?
It is becoming more preventative, which is very exciting, right? If you could, like, our dream is to forecast the seizure. Right now, we can't forecast it. We just detect it. But because we're continuously collecting data with people's informed consent, then that data is going into the research that's allowing us to learn better what patterns are associated with not having seizures and what patterns are associated with a future seizure. The same kinds of data are now being applied to other problems too. For example, mental health problems are increasing significantly. They've been increasing even before the pandemic. And now with the pandemic, the numbers are actually pretty messed up because a lot of people just aren't going to the doctor. But the reports from psychiatrists and psychologists are that business is up. We're interested also in measuring what data might be changing early on before you get really sick. And in fact, Empatica just got another very exciting medical clearance in Europe, the CE mark, for this device, which is now using AI to detect changes in your temperature, respiration, heart rate, skin conductance, that the pattern of which changes the night before you get a positive viral infection test. So whether it's a COVID test, an H1N1 or rhinovirus, we've tested with data from 2 kinds of flu and SARS-CoV-2. We give daily PCR tests from the nasal swab. And right when you're exposed, your PCR doesn't show anything. Usually within a couple days after the PCR is showing you're infected. And our device is also showing you're infected, even when you might feel only a little bit tired and no other symptoms. So you might think, oh, I've just been working hard. Our device may say, yeah, it looks like you're fighting a viral infection. Maybe you should stay away from grandma and go make a doctor's appointment tomorrow to get a test. Because if it's some kinds of flu, they could give you Tamiflu and you might fight it better earlier. Or you might just decide to go to bed early, drink more water, take your favorite vitamins, zinc C or whatever, and maybe boost your own immune system. But at least you'll know that you might be contagious and you'll stay away, hopefully, from giving it to other people.
What is the name of the product, this new product?
Yeah, so the new product, the device is called Embrace Plus. It's a new watch that was developed. This actually is not on the market globally yet. I'm wearing a preliminary version of it here. It's going on the market very soon. But it's the name of the product that does the viral forecasting for respiratory infections is called AURA, A-U-R-A. I don't think the company's treating it as an acronym, but I think of it as Are You Risk Assessed, A-U-R-A, because it's really giving you a sense of your risk. And if you're, some people don't care if they're getting sick, but some people They work in a family or a situation where if they're getting sick and they're contagious, but they don't have symptoms, they still don't want to go be around people who might have a very dangerous outcome if they got sick.
Dr. Picard, in one of your lectures, you mentioned a sad case of a boy with SUDEP, sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. I've never heard of SUDEP before, and I think most of the people don't know what it is. Could you explain and tell us why this disease is so serious?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking about that. It's a disease that is so much more common than people realize, and yet even a lot of neurologists haven't been trained to talk about it with their patients yet, even though the American Academy Neurological Association officially, and the American Academy of Neurology officially recommend that doctors tell their patients about it. SUDEP, SUDEP, is an acronym for sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. In the past, some people thought it was sudden unexplained death in epilepsy. Now, at like 1 in 10 people will have a seizure at some point in their life. But when you have repeated seizures, you can get an epilepsy diagnosis. And this is something that carries a much higher risk of death than doctors usually talk to their patients about. It's also known that you can have about a 65% decrease in the chance of death if the person reduces the frequency of grand mal seizures or has somebody there with them when they have it. So this is very recent findings, tons of research in the last 5 years. So now we know there's something you can do to reduce the death. Take the medications to reduce seizure frequency, and don't be alone, which is why, embrace and devices that alert somebody to come and be there with you when a seizure is detected are super important. So SUDEP is these deaths that arise in a person with epilepsy, and they're not attributed to drowning, trauma like hitting your head, an automobile accident. They're just when the person is found no longer alive, and they have an epilepsy diagnosis, and an autopsy shows nothing was wrong with them. They did not have a heart attack. They did not have trauma or anything else. It's also very surprising, but of all neurological diseases, stroke is number one in robbing people of future years of life. Everybody's heard of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, meningitis, encephalitis, but almost nobody's heard of SUDEP. And of that giant list, SUDEP is number 2. It's the second highest after stroke. So talk about SUDEP. Find out who of your family and friends has epilepsy, because a lot more people have it than talk about it. And let them know that they should not be alone when they have a seizure. And they should do everything they can to prevent seizures from happening.
Yeah. What a surprise. Yeah. It's surprising. Yeah.
It should be a household word like SIDS. Oh, in fact, almost everybody in the US has heard of sudden infant death syndrome. I'm not sure what it's called in Portuguese, but when a child under age 1 dies and they otherwise seem healthy, they now think a lot of those cases of early childhood death are also SUDEPs, that they're due to a possible seizure in a part of the brain that turns off your breathing, and the child is essentially dying from SUDEP in many cases. Probably not all, but in many.
Dr. Picard, I have a question that was sent by William Silva. He's following us, our conversation, and he's an implementation manager at Rapid AI. And he asks, do you think the popularity of face recognition apps can help to improve the AI algorithm and in the healthcare industry?
The popularity of face recognition apps can help improve the AI algorithm in the healthcare industry. I think I want to separate two things here. There's what's often called face recognition. Some people think of as any time a computer looks at a face. In the AI community, face recognition usually means we're recognizing who you are. Facial affect recognition usually means we're trying to read, do you look confused? Do you look frowning? Do you look stressed? And those have more specific uses. For example, if there's a receptionist reading your face and you look very concerned or confused, the receptionist might repeat herself. There are studies, for example, in medicine where people are looking at reading the face to see signs of pain in maybe a person who can't fill out a form about how much pain they're experiencing, or a person who doesn't speak the language, or a person maybe who's anesthetized for surgery and they're experiencing pain and their body's reacting, and the anesthesiologist is trying to understand what that experience might be when obviously the person is unconscious and can't talk. So also in babies, right, who can't describe their pain. So there are places where the facial affect reading is being developed in medicine. I don't know of any place where it's a product there yet, although they're working also, like surgeons who are trying to reconstruct a face and want to understand if your facial expressions have been reconstructed properly. They're interested in looking at it too, and also looking at various other diseases that affect facial muscle movements. But there's also potential for products in looking at psychiatric and therapeutic interactions and seeing things like, it's kind of counterintuitive. You might think if a person is depressed, they just don't smile. And if they're happy, they smile a lot. But actually, the happier person is likely to frown more too, in some cases. Like if you tell me something sad that happened to you, I'm more likely to frown if I'm happy, not if I'm depressed. If I'm depressed, I'm almost like, I don't even want to go there, right? Just flat. So there are outward signs that are being used as not singularly diagnostic, but as a piece of understanding what's going on with somebody. But I don't think any of these are products yet. So there's a lot of progress that still needs to be made, to answer Mr. Silva with a kind of a long description, before these really are part of our medical experience.
Dr. Picard, depression cases are increasing because of COVID-19. You've mentioned that. In addition, there's a fear that the disease may cause serious mental illness, mental issues. Last week, the New York Times, they published a story in which they mentioned a former American Marine, who started hallucinating, and he saw a SWAT officer, a SWAT member hidden in his garden. And do you believe that the pandemic will have a lasting effect on mental illness, including depression?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think it's going to cause some new problems. And I think it has exacerbated depression right now. While like the overall emergency room visits are down, for example, for children, the percentage of emergency room visits that are related to mental health have gone up. So as people start to be more comfortable going back to the doctor, I think we'll see a huge increase in these mental health problems. Another thing that worries me is the way that we've been learning to be antisocial. So you go outside and you walk down the sidewalk and somebody's walking towards you, and you separate from each other, and some people look away and they're not friendly. And it's almost like social distancing is teaching people to be antisocial. And I hope we change that quickly, because that's not good. People who are lonely and alone and now not able to smile and share a smile from a stranger, these are real problems. And I think we have got to address the mental health issues that this is increasing. I think in some cases, the mental health risk, especially for young people, is the damage potentially it can cause is higher than the physical health risk of COVID for many of our youth. So, who are otherwise healthy, right? If they have other health conditions, that may not be true. But a really young, healthy person has very low risk of problems from COVID-19 and may have a higher risk from mental health and socially dysfunctional behaviors.
Okay. Yeah. Many computer scientists they highlight the advantages of combining big data and artificial intelligence, and they say that this will allow the patients to have their medical history in just one place in the cloud, and it will facilitate. It will make easier. To find answers. I mean, the treatment will be facilitated, but there is no risk of invasion of these databases, which could give sensible information to people with malicious intent. Is this a real risk? What do you think?
Yeah, I think anytime that very valuable data are in just one place, it can become a target. And there is a risk when you put all of your money in one bank. There's a risk when you put all of your health data in one place. And so we might want to think about, there's no perfect security, right? There's no perfect cryptography. There's no perfectly secure system. But distributing things, in fact, is one of the ways AI researchers are trying to improve the security by, for example, if we're doing AI computation, we distribute the data and do the computation in different places so that no one place has all the data. And I think a similar principle should hold for anything of real value, right? You don't want to put all your jewelry in one box where the thief can take it. You don't want to put all your money in one bank. You don't want to put all your healthcare data in one place, even though it makes things easier when you go looking for a necklace or to withdraw money or to get your health data. There's a risk. So I think we're going to be learning more about that. And, 100% safety is unfortunately an illusion.
A question for Vinicius Carvalho. He asks if MIT Media Lab developed any recent technology to help people with autism during the pandemic.
Oh, I wish. So I have learned so much valuable science and humanity from people on the autism spectrum. In fact, our epilepsy work came out of work with people with autism. Our face reading work came out of helping people with autism. Some of our coolest work in, across the lab has come out of working with people with autism. There is one project I'm super excited about that is now helping not only many people with autism, but lots of people who have difficulty speaking, who have less than 20 words, who may have very few people who understand the 0 to very few words they have. And for example, they may say ba 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 and and they have these sounds. And a new babysitter or a new teacher comes, and the new teacher doesn't know what this means. The new babysitter doesn't know, is this child frustrated? Is this child happy? Is this child asking for something? And so the child's misunderstood, in which case then the child's more likely to become frustrated and you're likely to learn what that sounds like. But what if we could build a wearable that translates not Portuguese or English or Spanish, but translates this individual's sounds? So it's extremely hard to do because each time they make it, it's different and there's background noise and we don't have a lot of data. And the main rule in AI is for machine learning, it does better with more data. So here's a case where it's really hard, it keeps changing and there's almost no data. So we decided to tackle this at the Media Lab, and we love hard problems that people think we can't solve. And we've built wearables in AI that are now being used in the homes of families, collecting the data, learning patterns from the data, leveraging patterns from other acoustic communicative sounds made by people around the world. We think there may be some universal attributes to these And we've launched this effort called Kamala, Communication for All. And it's headed by Jaya Narayan and Christy Johnson in our lab, jointly with myself and Patty Maas on the committee, and also a number of other top researchers are involved. And we're really excited. It's already starting to do significantly better than random, and actually almost, I think, usefully predictive at guessing what state a person might be in when they're making these sounds, and communicating that with a smartphone to a caregiver who's nearby.
Yeah, great, that's great. Another question from Adalto Moreira. He asks about the advancements in an AI for surgeries through computer. I don't know what exactly he's
Yes.
talking about.
Yes, there have been huge advances in surgeries, minimally invasive surgeries and brain surgeries where the imaging is augmented by AI that helps better identify and segment and isolate and locate where precisely the part of the body that needs surgical activity is. And then those tools help guide the human surgeon. So it's like a human plus AI, human plus robotic tool. And that is able to produce less invasive surgeries, which usually means you heal a lot faster from the surgery and have fewer complications and side effects. So these are very exciting advances in AI and technology helping with our health.
Yeah. Victor Prodonov, he asks, how can AI help the treatment beyond diagnosis of degenerative cognitive diseases such as Alzheimer?
Oh, that's another exciting area. We have a lot of work going on in forecasting changes in Alzheimer's. There are now large data sets that allow AI researchers to run algorithms to see if you can tell when somebody's moving from mild cognitive impairment to, more severe dementia, Alzheimer's, where you could forecast a little bit better. Now, that doesn't necessarily help the person directly, but it helps scientists better understand what are the contributing factors and what kinds of treatments might be making things a little bit better there. Let me just add a personal note here. I think AI researchers have a lot to learn still by looking at what is happening in society and not just looking at the medical data. For example, I have a mom who has an Alzheimer's diagnosis. She has not declined the way that the algorithms predict. And I think a big factor is a new romance came into her life after the diagnosis, my dad's old college roommate. And the joy and the romance and the social engagement of these two people in their 80s led her mind to become more active again. And her memory started working better, which is not supposed to happen. In Alzheimer's, all of the treatments just say they slow your decline. But I saw social interaction take a person who couldn't remember what she said a few minutes ago to somebody who was telling me about what happened yesterday and last night and going to the theater. And, oh, I can't remember the names of the actors, but we saw The Sound of Music. She knew the name of the show. So I think we have a lot more still to learn, not just from data and AI, but from one another, from human interaction, and from things that bring people joy and meaning and purpose. And those are things that AI has made really very little progress on understanding.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. Dr. Roberto Gregory Jr. The question is, what would happen if companies, with big companies, commercial companies such as Apple, for example, could apply AI to monitor the health in their devices, Apple Watches and other commercial products. What will be the impact? What are the implications, he asks?
They are very interested in this. Apple is highly focused on doing healthcare from their phone and Apple Watch, as are Fitbit, Empatica, Facebook. Lots of companies are really interested in the potential of wearables and AI to improve healthcare. Again, I would caution people from putting all of your healthcare data in any one company for security reasons. I think it's important to think about different healthcare conditions that you have and what's a priority in your life. So a one-size device like an Apple Watch that tries to do everything probably isn't going to do some things very well. So for example, it's not an FDA-approved seizure detector, even though they have some software you can run on it that detects shaking movement. That same device that can sometimes detect shaking movement might decide to update your Uber app at 2 a.m., right? Or your gaming app might update. And what if you have the seizure at 2 a.m., right? So it's not going to give you the highest quality medical service if you have a real serious medical need. Whereas a device that is designed and optimized for what you need would be something I would trust much more with a life-threatening event.
Yeah. Dr. Picard, science still seems a very masculine environment. I don't know if it's true or it's just a perception, but being a woman, did you have any difficulties to express your ideas to your colleagues?
It's changing. There are MIT now, the incoming class is about half female. And in biology and chemistry, we see a lot more women in many areas than men. Engineering is still a lot more men than women, which is crazy because it's such a cool field. I highly recommend girls and women go into engineering. It's a really cool place to make things and express things, and you'll do just fine, especially if you like math and building things and solving problems. It's a great place. There is still a lot of sexism. There will be. I mean, people have said things to me that some people would get very upset about, and I think you just have to kind of brush it off and do great work, move ahead. I have never had trouble. Well, that's not true. I did have trouble expressing one set of ideas. Mostly, I never had trouble expressing ideas until I started learning about how important emotion was in the brain. And then it was like, oh no, not emotion. I can't tell people about emotion. Emotion is what people associated with being irrational. And about the time I was coming out with it, it was associated particularly with women being irrational. And I thought, great, I want to be taken seriously as a scientist. I can't deal with emotion. That's going to kill my career. So I kept trying to get guys to work on it. I got a bunch of guys to work on it, but not enough. So I still wrote the book on it, Affective Computing. And afterwards, what was great is a lot of men and top scientists around the world started seeing how important it was and working on it. And now it's a whole field. It's got an IEEE journal. That's the Electrical Engineering Society. It's an international group of people that's mostly men working on it. And men who thought I had lost it when I originally proposed it. They were like, can you believe this crazy work she's doing? Years later, they came to me and asked me for my data. They started working on it too. So it made me very nervous talking about it early on because I thought, they're not going to take me seriously. But I did serious work. They took it seriously. And actually, it wound up helping my career more than I ever thought. I thought it was just something I had to get out like any other scientific finding.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Picard, we have two more questions from Inti Paredes and Maria de Paula Almeida. Both is about how to apply AI in an oncology. Inti asks about what kind of systems can help in exams and treatment of cancer. And Maria Paula, she's asking about how AI can help to prevent mama cancer, breast cancer.
Breast cancer.
It's not for us here. It's câncer de mama. In English, it's breast cancer.
Yes. Wow, great questions. I am not an expert on the prevention, other than learning a lot about diet and how that may influence things. And AI does have apps to help people track what they're eating there, and I think those could be a useful part of studies. Plus, the AI is very good now about tracking your lifestyle, sleep and stress, autonomic stress. One area I'm really interested in with AI and cancer treatment is the dealing with nausea and anxiety. We have measured with our wearable sensors changes that we think relate to brain activity involved in fear and threat and anxiety and pain. And we think that often those components are not well characterized or understood during the treatment. And if we could better understand those, then the treatment could better address that existential fear, that anxiety, that threat that a lot of people may not be able to articulate or may not admit is a factor, but we might be able to see it in the data. So I'm very excited about that. We also think that we have a measure that may relate to nausea, increasing nausea. And if we could see that coming and help people too, and give them better control over these things, then I think that could reduce their stress and improve their experience. Because one thing we've learned is that when things are out of your control, your stress goes up. So if we can help you identify the aspects of a terrible illness that you can control, then those should help you lower your stress and hopefully improve the treatment and the outcomes as well.
Yeah, great. Well, Dr. Picard, thank you very much for your time and your attention. It was really useful and enlightening, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Joao. This is a pleasure.
Thank you. And I would also like to thanks to all of people who are following us and participating with questions. And live the Valor is streamed through Valor site and Valor channels on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn from Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. You are all invited. Thank you all, and have a good day.